So today we will see event handling. So what exactly is event handling? In Java, this concept comes into picture whenever you're using some graphical user interface based programs like your swings or applets. So what are events? It's something that it's an action. Something takes place, and whenever that takes place, for example, your mouse click or your keyboard event, something must be done when it happens. Somebody presses a mouse click on a particular object, you want something to happen from that action. So such things can be dealt with event handling. So the main packages that support this event handling are your java.util and the java.awt, and it mainly deals with all your buttons, scroll bar, checkboxes, and your applets. So we'll see the delegation event model. This particular model helps you in understanding the event and processing it. So without this model also you can do with the java.util, but this particular model, it has four components with which you can separate all your objects from dealing with the events that occur from the object. So it gives a separation. So the structure of your objects is independent of the actions or the deal, how you interpret or how you process the actions that happen on the object. So this is happening with the delegation event model. So for handling any particular event, in this model you have four main components. One is the event sources, then you have the event listeners and abstract classes. So these are the four components of your delegation event model. So this event classes are the actual sources of your event. Then you have the event listeners, which will be listening to the events that occur. So we will see what is events. So whenever a state change occurs in your source, so you have event sources like your buttons or any particular component that can have a change in its state. So these sources will generate events. So these events, what exactly is it? It is also one object which will describe the state change, how the state change, when it change, it can be anything related to that. So whenever event sources generate an event, these events will be generated like a object. Those are events. And event sources generate the event and it sends these details of the event to listeners. So if it will not simply send the event sources to any of the methods, it will only send it to the registered listeners. So you have event listeners. What are event listeners? It's also an object which will be notified whenever an event occurs. So if you want to use event handling, you will need to have event sources, and these event sources must be registered using event listener for some particular type of event. For every particular type, for example, I want a button to register, I want to know whenever the button is pressed or when the button is released, I have to register the listeners to notify me that that particular event has occurred. So event sources, they generate the event and they also notify all the event listeners that the particular event has occurred along with all the details of the event. And if some sources have the criteria that only one listener can be allowed, then you have to add a java.throws too many listener exception. So this will make it that only one listener will be allowed for a source. And suppose you added a listener and later on you want to remove that listener, you can do it with void type listener remove. So these are the methods through which you can register a listener to the event source and you can remove a listener from the event source. So this is about events, sources and listener. So then this delegation model, these event classes and there are event listeners and handling, this is how you make the sources register with listeners, and when the event occurs, the listeners will catch this event and they will do the necessary actions for dealing with that event. And you have adapter classes which will help you to run the code efficiently when you want to use only one of the method in the listener but not all. Then it will reduce your job by adapting you to that particular listener interface. So this is the delegation event model. So we'll just go in a glance the event classes. So in Java you have an event object class This event object is the main root of your Java event class hierarchy. So it is available in your java.util, and it has the constructor of event object, and it has two methods, get source to string off. But when you're using your delegation event model, it is not from this, it uses the event class from your AWT events. So all the events that are handled by your delegation event model will be using your AWT event. So you have the event object class, which is a super class of all the events, and you have the AWT event class, which is super class of all the AWT events that is handled in your delegation event model. So what are the different event classes available? So we have the action event class. So whenever a particular component is activated, like a button is pressed or a menu is selected, then the action event occurs. And you have the adjustment event. So whenever you move a particular scroll bar, there is some component that is adjustable. For example, a window which can be adjustable with a scroll bar, or a list of items where only few of the items are visible, and you can adjust the number of visibility by scrolling. You want to see the later numbers or you want to see the previous numbers, you scroll up and down. So such items are called adjustable items. So when you have adjustable items with scroll bar, your adjustable events can occur. Then next is the text event. So whenever a text field or the text component is added or something is typed, a text content is changed, then a text event will occur. Next you have the component and container. So when you deal with swings or applets, you will know what exactly is a component and container. For example, I may have a form, and the form may have several components, like I have a username, enter the username, and then I have a password and a box for entering the password, then I'll have a OK button, reset button. So there are a lot of components. All these buttons, labels are called as components, and the form which is holding all these components is called as the container. So whenever a container's component is added or removed, then a container event will be generated. And whenever a component is resized, removed, or if it is hidden or visible, then the component event will be generated. And then you have the item event. So if you have a list of items and if you want to select one from it, or if you have check boxes or option buttons and you are selecting one from it, then an item event will get generated. Next you have the focus event. So whenever you move your cursor, or if you get a particular item gets the keyboard focus or the mouse focus, then a focus event will be generated. And again, your focus can be a temporary focus where you're just moving the mouse, or a permanent focus where you're actually selecting the component. So such things will give a focus event. Then you have the key event. So whenever your keyboard is used, when you're pressing a key or releasing a key, the keyboard event is used, the key event gets generated. And the window event is used or generated whenever you resize a window, maximize it, close it. So whenever a window is changed or altered or done something with, the window event gets generated. And the mouse event is generated whenever you have something that is to be done with the mouse, a click, or it might be a drag or a double click, or moving the mouse. That is all called mouse event. And the mouse wheel event is when you move the wheel on the mouse, a mouse wheel event is generated. And input event, this is the event for any kind of input. So this input event is the super class of your keyboard key event and mouse event. So whenever you have key and mouse event, it is the subclass of your input event. The two ways where how you can do the input. So if you want to deal with programming that is related to event handling, or if you want to do the code for this, then you will have to know the structure of all these event classes. That is, what are these event class names, exactly like this, the name of the class, and how what kind of constructor it has, what are the variables this class have, how you can deal with the variables, what are the methods available inside this class, and what are the constants that are defined inside this class. You will have to know all these methods. So if you don't know this, it will be difficult for you to do the coding on it. So you should have this documentation ready for you to start coding on event handling. So if you're seeing in the exam point of view, you'll have to remember all this. And if you're seeing in the coding point of view where you're going to just use this, then if you don't remember it, then you can have a documentation handy where you can come back, refer the syntax or the methods available and use it effectively. But if you remember these, then it is well and good.